Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Shaman Vizzi. As we get ready for the 32nd annual conference in May, I want to share with you what we do at the Coalition year-round. We work as a team to support New York State foster, adoptive, and kinship families, but we couldn't do it without the internal support as well. So I wanted to share with you an interview that I just did with Pat O'Brien, the executive director of the Coalition. His background is extensive, from being the founder of You Gotta Believe, to the director of GAPE in New York State, to his present role as the executive director. So let's see what Pat had to say in part one of my interview with him, when I asked him to describe his journey to where he is today. Pat O'Brien, I have never had the opportunity to interview you after all these years of knowing you.
Really?
So I know it's kind of interesting. I've interviewed so many other people, but I think it's appropriate that since we have our 32nd annual conference coming up in May, why don't you explain to everybody, the first thing I'd like to know is how you began your career in the adoption and foster care field for everyone else that doesn't know out there to find out.
Well, what's interesting, the fact that you haven't ever interviewed me before, it just goes to show that I'm really the least important person in regard to a coalition. I happen to be the executive director here, and I like to think I'm a bit of a leader as well, but I'm not that important. So I'm glad that you're finally getting around to me, and it's interesting how I started in this field. I went from college to high school to college to social work school, and I became a social worker, and I worked with kids, teenagers in family court and families for 4 years. And after my third year there, my wife at the time and I adopted a baby. And now I'm a father, and even though I love my job, I need a better job. I need to make more income. So I looked in the New York Times, and there was this organization that was looking for somebody to run a special needs adoption program. And I applied for that as a supervisor. And then as a result of getting that job, I saw another job of an agency that placed older kids for adoption that was coming to New York from Massachusetts. I applied for that job, having really no knowledge at all about anything. And somehow did an interview process where I got myself hired. And I worked that job for about 7 years. And I said, I really love doing this. I really love getting kids into families before they age out of foster care. But I didn't like the boss. So me and a group of adoptive parents and former foster youth put together a board of directors and created an organization that did just that work, finding permanent parents for the older kids aging out of foster care. That organization was named You Gotta Believe. So I did that work for about 25 years. And then as a result of doing anything for 25 years, you need a change. I decided to take a sabbatical. And I wasn't the type that was going to run to another country to do a sabbatical. And what I wound up doing was going to Connecticut. I became a Wendy's Wonderful Kids recruiter. So what I was doing big time, now I was doing the actual work full time as I was the president of this coalition. So one of the nice things about no longer being an agency executive was, and I tried to get on the board of the coalition for like 20 years. But when I was no longer an agency executive, the coalition asked me to join their board. And then shortly after that, I became the board president. Now I'm working this job in Connecticut, and I'm the board president. And then after a couple of years, because I promised a couple of years of doing that and finding homes for older kids and getting them into families that knew them very well, an opportunity came up where the coalition applied to get post-adoption funds. And I asked to step down from the board to start up our post-adoption programs. And then about a year and a half ago, I got asked to be the interim executive director, and now I'm functioning as the executive director. So it's totally understandable why I never got an interview before.
So as we can see, you've had an extensive accidental journey through everything. It just seems to just follow you just one step at a time. So I've seen on your bio, you've been on board of NACAC, You just said that you were on the Wendy's Wonderful Kids. You were a recruiter. You were one of the founders of You Gotta Believe. You're an executive director. You do a radio show. You do speaking engagements.
Yeah, that's
With
true.
all those things that you've done over the years, what is it about your roles with all these things? Why are you doing so many things? And obviously we know it's a good thing, but what's so important about all these roles that you're doing? What are you trying to get out there to everybody?
Well, for years it was finding homes for kids on the verge of aging out. This is a continuation of that, and that's supporting families after their kids move in, because a lot of our families, even when they adopt children right out of the hospital, there is an element of trauma and loss that families just need support and help with. And this is a great continuation of the work that I've done. I see it as evolving work. And right now, being able to support families through all the work that we do in post-adoption, through all the families that we support through our helpline, on our 24-hour helpline, and for all the groups that we engage with each other. I mean, just the other night, I attended a meeting where the parent leaders were at the same meeting supporting each other. There's just so many wonderful things we do to support families here. And it's just the continuation of a wonderful career. And I've dedicated myself to this career, to the people that I'm serving right now.
Why don't you tell everybody what exactly does the coalition do as a whole? I mean, I know that's probably going to take, that's a very long answered question, but if you had to say something out to the community right now, what exactly is the coalition?
Support. And I mean, that's the short answer, support. And then who do we support? Foster, adoptive, kinship, guardianship, custody families who are bringing children into their household. They didn't give birth to the children, that we're supporting that piece of their family. I mean, a lot of the families that we work with also have birth children, but this is the piece that we want to be there to support any family that needs support anytime that they need it.
There's one piece of the coalition that you were a director of, was the AGAPE program.
Yes.
You want to explain a little bit to the community again about what exactly out of the coalition now you're getting fine tuning it, and what exactly is AGAPE?
Well, AGAPE is actually a word and it's an acronym. The acronym is the Adoption and Guardianship Assistance Program for Everyone. And the E part of, or else we would have been AGAP, but we added the for everyone because we finally advocated for decades that New York State provide post-adoption services. And then they finally made funding available at the end of 2016. And prior to that, the funding was designated to a specific population, people who were of a certain income and who adopted children from the foster care system. And the for everyone part of AGAPE is we can serve everybody of every income. We can serve everybody who has adopted children or done guardianship with children from other countries, privately, domestically, and from foster care. So AGAPE is an acronym, but it's also a very meaningful word that means unconditional love that basically parents have for their children. So it turned out to be a cool acronym and a great word. But services after the kids move in, after the adoption finalizations occurs, after the guardianship finalizations occur. That's what AGAPE is.